Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Shell Watts. I'm the founder of MBAadmit.com, and it's always wonderful to come back and join the GMAT Club for a webinar. Today, we are going to talk about the Executive MBA versus MBA and 7 factors to help you think about how to choose the right path for your MBA. Before I start delving into this topic, I want to ask you to like this video so we can make sure to make plenty more after this. And please think of subscribing to our new YouTube channel, which you can see there, Dr. Shell, Executive Expert. Some of the advantages of our company, I'll tell you quickly. I have been giving admissions advising for over 30 years. The company predates all the top EMBA programs. And so we understand the nuances of each of the programs because we've been working with them for so long. We bring you that expertise. If you do work with our company, you have the opportunity to work with me directly. And you will notice that we have some of the lowest pricing around. We welcome you to come to our website and either give us your LinkedIn address or send your most recent resume or fill out a profile evaluation form. And we're happy to let you know what we think about the strength of your candidacy. So let's just get straight into this. So I want to cover some basics first. What is an Executive MBA or EMBA? It is one path to the MBA. So one of multiple paths that you can take to get a Master's of Business Administration degree. So what is distinctive about the EMBA programs is that they have been, created for older candidates who are more seasoned and senior, and have more work experience than a typical full-time student. So in general, a full-time MBA student has 2 to 5 years of work experience when they start the program. And for the Executive MBA student, you will have 5 to 6 or more. So sometimes a program will tell you that they have an average of 13 years for each of their students. But again, the range goes from about 5 and up. So it'll be an older cohort, more seasoned cohort. Another thing that's distinctive is that they've been designed so that students do not have to stop working or relocate to participate and complete the program. They're usually given the programs, the classes, and the immersions on the off periods from your work. So that's usually the weekends. The key thing that I'm asked about often, though, people are concerned about what will my diploma say? And as I say, it is just one route to the MBA. So your diploma will say MBA. So for example, if you went through the Wharton Executive MBA program, when you write up your resume will simply be saying Wharton MBA. And so it's a great credential, it's a great path and opportunity. So the question becomes, which of the top schools offer Executive MBA programs? And the answer is most of the same schools that offer great full-time programs also offer great Executive MBA programs. The only exception is Harvard, which is, a great disappointment for people. So in terms of the top schools, Harvard does not offer an Executive MBA program. Stanford offers what we call the Masters of Science, so basically MSX, which is their Executive MBA equivalent. So let's talk about first what the benefits that are common to both of these paths are before we talk about differences that would make you choose one path over another. Both of them, Executive MBA and MBA programs, have broad curriculums. So in the Executive MBA program, you will find that just like a full-time MBA, it covers things like business fundamentals, from marketing to finance. They also will offer electives to allow you to do a deep dive in areas like entrepreneurship, finance, healthcare. And this is a popular myth, is that the Executive MBA cannot be used to make a career change. That is actually not true. So again, it is the same curriculum that you'll get in the MBA program. It's just that when it comes to changing careers, you're going to have to be more of the driver of that if you're in an Executive MBA program, because companies won't come in large numbers to recruit Executive MBA program candidates, simply because many of them, at least half of them, are usually trying to advance within their own company and not changing jobs. So it's up to you to do the networking, to go to the career services and network with alumni and recruiters. But we've seen many people make career changes using the Executive MBA. And so it is a myth that you cannot use it for that purpose. And you can use it to change jobs, functions, and industries. You'll have new skills. And again, career services gives you valuable resources from help with your resume to interview coaching to great contacts with alumni members and recruiters. So additional benefits of both paths are branding and prestige, the fact that you will have new skills, you will have great new networks in terms of students, alumni, and faculty. You'll benefit from the diverse viewpoints of diverse, candidates and other students in your program. And then in many cases, you will get a promotion or salary. In the case of the salary increase, in the case of an MBA program, the promotion would happen as you're leaving the program. So full-time MBA, as you're leaving, you're usually going into a higher level job. And for the executive MBA, since you're actually completing that while you're working, sometimes a promotion will happen during the program, sometimes after. Same with salary increases, that your company sees the increased skills, increased knowledge, increased capabilities, and therefore you will see a return on the investment, and you will see, in many cases, a salary increase or promotion. So how do you then decide between these two paths? Like what are some of the things you should think about when you think, can I apply for an executive MBA? Will I be successful? Or can I try for a full-time MBA? Age is one of the most important things, because in general, the MBA, top MBA programs do target younger candidates. And so that means ages 24 to 29. When you're about 32, 33, that's where many of the top programs think that you are actually aging out of the pool. In terms of executive MBA, the ages are typically 27 and up. And so if you're a 22-year-old, in most cases, you won't be competitive for a top executive MBA program, because the ideal will be that you're not going to blend with the cohort and you may not have sufficient experience. The big exceptions for younger candidates is when, for some reason, someone has worked their way really high very quickly at a young age. And in cases of older candidates, I've seen older folks in their late 30s. That's not very old, but in terms of the MBA, full-time it is. But when someone, for instance, has done military service, they might be 37, and the schools will be more receptive to that, because they think that something like military service is a valid reason why you might be approaching the program at a later age. But in general, age is used to filter candidates. And so you may find that if you're 40 trying to get into a top full-time program, that your age causes an automatic rejection. So just be mindful of how age affects the entire process. Leadership experience. So before I said age was a factor, I was not saying seniority. It was age just by itself. Now here's the issue of leadership experience. Again, it's not an issue of seniority. So there is a myth that to be competitive in an executive MBA pool, that you have to be very senior in a company. That is not actually the case. The schools do want to know that you have leadership experience, but that's not necessarily managerial experience. So even though, again, some of the websites will say you should be managing, you should have managed people for about 5 years, we've seen many candidates who are individual contributors, who don't have high titles, and still get in because they're able to showcase that they have relevant leadership experience. So just remember that the way you do that is talking about managing projects, collaborating with peers, interacting with the C-suite. All of those are bits of leadership experience that you can showcase in your application. If you don't have direct reports, you can still be competitive. You just need to know how to write up your application well, and how to guide your recommendation writers to talk about the right things. And again, you do not need to have a director title, or a title that is that high sounding. We've helped many people with more junior sounding titles like project manager to get into the very top programs, from Wharton to MIT. So just focusing on leadership. Ask yourself, do you have sufficient leadership to be competitive in an executive MBA pool? And that is, again, one of the deciding factors about, is that route even an option for you? Another decision factor is the working full-time versus immersion issue. Now, as we said, the Executive MBA programs are designed for people to continue working full-time. So the formats do vary greatly. Some of them are, you have one long weekend a month and that's all. Everything else is virtual. Others meet once every third weekend, others every other weekend, others every weekend. So there's a lot of variety. But the whole point is that it's done during off work hours. And so for many people, they don't want to stop their career. They don't want to lose the momentum. They don't want to lose the income. And so this is a nice option. Well, just remember that the costs of the top MBA and EMBA programs are relatively comparable, but that if you do the executive route, you're going to continue to make money for 2 years. And if you do the full time, you're stopping that income for 2 years. So there may be a difference in terms of financially where you are at the end of the programs, but some people want that immersion experience. And so they would prefer to be in the full-time program, even if that means, sacrificing income for 2 years. Another thing that you should think about, that GPA. Now, some of you have not seen your transcripts for a long time, and you may not remember exactly what it looks like. And so I do get people who see the transcript and they're very surprised and very disappointed and then panicked about how do I get into a top school when obviously in college I wasn't very focused. Just remember that if you do have a pretty low GPA, it's easier to override that in the Executive MBA pool. The GPA weighs less because for many people, undergrad was many years ago when they're applying in that EMBA pool. And professional success weighs much more heavily. So for people who really could go either direction, EMBA or MBA, if there is a low GPA, think about, is the EMBA a preferable route because you can override that GPA more easily to get to top schools like Wharton, MIT, Yale, Kellogg, Columbia, Booth, the list goes on. And that is a big difference between the two schools. It is much harder to get into Wharton with the 2.7 if you are applying to the full-time program. We've done it in some cases with really extreme reasons about why the GPA was at that level. It's just a whole lot easier to help people override that GPA if it's the executive pool. A low test score. So when I say test score, I do mean GMAT, GRE, or executive assessment. So many of the top full-time programs require the GMAT or the GRE. Both of those will take a lot of time to study for. And so some people will study, and just not get a good score. And they'll just say, my score is making me sick. So, they just say, I'm sick with worry about the fact that I just can't get this higher. And is this going to prevent me from getting into a top program? So the reality is that in the Executive MBA pool, it's, again, easier to override a low score because professional experience is weighed so heavily. There's also the case that many of the top schools in the executive pool do not even require a standardized test at all. And then it's also the case that they most of the top schools accept the executive assessment instead of the GMAT and GRE. And that is a much easier test to study for. So you might want to think about, again, if the test is going to be a barrier, is it worth trying to target the executive pool in order to get to a higher ranked school and override a standardized test score that you have, or just not have to present one at all? And then finally, there's non-traditional or overrepresented candidates. Over the years, we have come to see that for those two pools of candidates, there's just more opportunities at the executive level because at that point, the schools are just looking, have you been successful? Is there a rationale as to why you need our program? And so we've seen everyone from veterinarians to dentists, get into these top programs. There's just much more leeway in terms of what is your background. You don't need to be coming from a business background. And so again, if you find that in the full-time pool, it was harder to access the top programs because maybe you were non-traditional or you are an overrepresented profile, which usually means someone who is maybe from abroad and from South Asia or Asia, well, then you might have more opportunities at the executive level. One last point, sacrificing personal time. Um, this is just going to be one of the things that you do have to manage if you take the executive route, because the program is condensed onto weekends. And that just means that time that you would have spent with family, you will be spending studying instead. The full-time program is more spread out in terms of the classes. And so therefore, it's going to feel like less of a demand on your personal time. And for those candidates who could go either direction, that is actually a decision factor that might be important. So that is where we are. I will take some questions here at the end. Please remember to like our video, and we will definitely love it if you will subscribe to our channel. You're going to notice that we've covered a lot of other topics in webinars, everything from overriding a low GPA to how to stand out as an overrepresented candidate, tips for reapplicants. So feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website as well. And don't forget to come forward and give us your LinkedIn profile or a recent resume. Should you like us to let you know what we think about your profile, you are also welcome to fill out the profile evaluation form on our website. So for those of you who have questions, please let me know. And I'll try to answer some of those right now. Okay, so I do see some coming in. So let me take a little bit of time to answer some of these. Okay, so can you apply to executive MBA programs and MBA programs at the same time? That's a bit of a complicated question. So let's answer it in parts. So first of all, if you're applying to the same school, so in most cases, one school does not want you to apply to two of its programs at the same time. So you do have to choose. But sometimes say you're going to do the MBA, the full-time first, if you do find out you don't get in, at times there's a later deadline for the executive program. And so therefore you could still apply to that executive program in many cases. Again, you're going to have to check with each school to find out, what their particular rules are. Stanford MSX, which is not strictly an executive MBA program, but it's essentially their equivalent. It actually allows you to apply to both. And so you're allowed to check a box on the application form and just say, I want to submit to both programs. But that's one of the few that allows you to apply to full-time and another program, in that case, MSX. And so look into each of the schools to find out, what they require or allow. But in most cases, you have to do one at a time. Sometimes you can do both in the same year if the deadlines work out that way, but in many cases, it means that you're applying in different years. Another question is, does it hurt if you've been rejected at a school's full-time MBA program first before applying to the EMBA later? And this is saying years later. So no, it does not. So the thing is, whenever you are not granted admission to a school, you should take a good look at your application and your candidacy, your credentials, and assess what was missing, what was the deficit. And so as long as you fix that, even if you're applying to the same program again the very next year, if you fixed what the problem was, then the schools will look at you with open eyes. And so that same logic extends to if you applied to an MBA program, but then you've strengthened some of the weaknesses and now you're applying to the executive program, you should not be hurt by the prior application. And in many cases, they won't even be referring to that prior application if it was a couple of years back. See any other questions here? Let me see. I'll take one more. Okay, so the whole idea about if you're 37 and you really want to apply to a full-time MBA program because you just want that immersion experience, is it a viable situation? The answer is that usually in our estimation, so unless there's something like military service where the schools tend to not penalize someone who served in the military and then they're coming out and want to join a full-time program. So that's a one big exception. But for other folks, usually what we find is that you're more competitive at good regional schools. So places like Duke, University of Virginia, you might have more opportunities there. But in terms of the very top programs, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, they tend to really feel that that is not going to blend well with their pool. And so at that age, 37, you really are not going to be, in most cases, very competitive in a full-time pool that is a top program. So you have to just sort of weigh what's more important, the immersion experience or the ranking of the school that you attend, and then decide on that basis, what your best step would be. Okay, so one last one. I'm going to try to answer this one. So I have a question, someone saying that you have 8 years in health insurance as a software professional. Will you be seen as IT or healthcare? Well, actually both. I still think it would be both. And so what you say you're going to be doing in your future might have an impact on how they're seeing you. So by what I mean by that is that, if you say that you're going to be starting your own software company in the future, then you're going to be more defined as software. And if you're saying, I want to pivot within healthcare and do a different role, then you'll be seen more as healthcare. So what you're saying as your goal will impact that. But you're both, and it's not going to hurt you to be IT. You just have to distinguish yourself in that pool, because they get a lot of very qualified people in the IT pool. And so you do need to make sure you distinguish yourself in terms of quality of leadership experience and the extras in terms of what you're doing in your extracurricular life. All right. Well, that is going to be, I think, where I leave things today. Let's see. So, thank you all for joining us today. I do see a couple more questions coming in. Feel free to reach out to me at our website, and I'm happy to respond to any of those questions. So what you want to do is send that to info@mbaadmit.com, and I'm more than happy to respond to you. And, thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to doing another session soon.